Thanks for having me. My name's Alistair Murdoch. I come from northwest Victoria, so I'll just flick through to a picture of where we are. So you can just see up there we're 80 kilometres northwest of Swan Hill, just off the Murray River, and our profile is pretty much 330 mils annual rainfall. We're roughly 200 millimetres growing season rainfall, and we run a 40-foot controlled traffic system with a multiple of 1 to 3 with sprayer and spreader and a couple other implements that fit in around that. Our land formation is quite variable. We have a dune swale land formation, so we have numerous soil types on our farm. So I guess some of what I'm going to demonstrate to you is, I guess, how we've managed some of our soil types to extract the benefits out of CTF. So the introduction, while we've got into CTF, I'll just talk about that. What we've learnt, I've probably had the privilege of being able to work with some researchers, some that are here today, and we've sometimes picked some stuff up, other times we haven't learned a lot, and I guess just my view on where we're heading at the moment, just to improve our farming system, which I guess I see CTF having a fit because, it'll allow it to be implemented a lot easier. So I guess the key motivation, you probably hear it from a lot of speakers, but the main reason I got into it was a number of years ago being involved with Vic No-Till. A lot of people suggested back then that if you're in no-till, that was half the story, and CTF was the other half of the story. And I guess when we're involved with Vic No-Till, that was the main emphasis, which was to increase water use efficiency of our soils, just pretty much, to extract the maximum amount out per annum. And I guess residue was a key driver for us back then, and then we rolled into a CTF system by not having to spend a lot, we bought a new header with a 40-foot front, so we're able to just make our own on-farm implementations. I've just got a picture here, that's I guess our current setup. We've got a compaction cart there with tracks on it. So, and you can probably even see in the foreground there where it probably resonated with me a little bit earlier when Scott spoke about possibly tracks compacting the area, and I probably have been noticing since we have purchased that chaser bin that I don't need auto steer anymore. I can define the line. It's pretty easy now. So what we've learnt is we've had 3 research attempts at quantifying the benefits of CTF. There's probably not a lot of CTF participants or adopters in the Northern Mallee. So I guess the question, and there's a few here today that are CTF adopters from the Northern Mallee, but the question I've often been asked is, what are the benefits and what are you measuring? So it has been a bit hard. Some of the early research that was done was to look at infiltration water rates. That was through the Department of Ag. The second lot was in 2016, where we actually looked with Jeff and his team. We looked at rolling resistance of machinery and also with tines measuring just breakout pressure. And then we also had the privilege last year of doing a deep ripping trial with Australian Controlled Traffic Foundation as well. So I guess just to touch on the soil infiltration research, that probably was a week or 2 of work. I guess the take-homes messages were, which everyone would be fully aware of, that infiltration rates on our wheel tracks were obviously a lot slower than on our non-wheeled area. At that stage, we'd only been in CTF for 4 years, and we had adopted, or we had purchased a bit of land, just before the start of that seeding. So we actually tested our zero controlled traffic paddocks, which had been purchased, versus our controlled traffic paddocks, try and line up similar soil textures, and it wasn't a clear winner as to whether we were a long way down the track. I guess mentioning before, we're dune swale land formations. I'll have a photo coming up here soon that will, I guess, just show you what the soil types look like and give you a bit of an idea as to, I guess, what we're working with. So I guess it was effectively just that process of watching the infiltration rates and going from there. With the University of Queensland and Jeff's team, we did some testing, like I mentioned. I guess the ones that stood out was just the rolling resistance in terms of on the tracks versus on the untracked area. and I guess what implications that has for fuel use. So I'll just flick to that. But I guess if you look there, you just see down the bottom, it's on the bed and on the lane, so I guess off the wheel tracks and the lane being the wheel tracks and the difference. So you can see there with a track machine there was a lot less energy required on the tracks than what there was out in the paddock or in the untrafficked area. And we did the same thing with the wheel machine as well, and the difference wasn't as much, but I guess it just quantified in our mind that we have got some fuel consumption savings, having sprayed some paddocks that haven't been controlled traffic, meaning new paddocks we get versus ones we have for a while, or if you do get off your tracks, you do notice just with machinery bogging down, I suppose, or just being a lot harder to move along. And this was just another test that we've done there, was just testing resistance off the tracks and then on the tracks, and it was showing similar results. And we weren't the only people that did some research there. It was done right throughout the low rainfall region. And then the next bit of testing we've done, which was last year, which is where pretty much I'll speak about mostly today, is the CTF trial. So we're looking at deep ripping some sandy soils. So the specifications that Nigel Wilhelm had given me is that he wanted deep sand to pretty much 50, 60 centimetres, and it could have a clay base underneath it. We set it up in a 40-foot controlled traffic system, and lots of measurements, and I'll acknowledge all the people involved at the end, but lots of measurements were taken through, and there's a number there that I haven't even seen, but a lot of measurements were taken all the way through the growing season, and I'll just present a few of them. So to give you the context of our soil types, so this is a EM38 map, which in our region, it has a fairly strong correlation to soil texture. So a bit of work I did earlier on with Ben Jones is we're able to calibrate, and so the lighter the colour, the sandier the soil. So it gave us some context, and like I've got there, roughly about 25% of our farms a deep enough sand where it's 50 centimetres or below. Often a lot of it is duplex, but it's not always duplex. We can have some just deep sands. So I guess they're the ones that we're targeting with that research, and this research is applicable from our testing to those sorts of soil types, I suppose. So I'll just point that out there. So probably, like you can see there, once you get into the green, it's got more of a loam base to it in our area. That colour code is just a colour coding that I've made up. So it's just pretty much the raw data, and we've just put it into a colour zone for us to understand it. And this is, I think everyone should be able to see fairly clearly there, but we've got pretty much mostly sand, but we are starting to start to see a little bit more red texture. So I guess we've got a duplex soil type there, and we're starting to get some clay at depth. That's just one profile picture. Where the trial wasn't quite as distinct as that. That's taken off to the side, so there's a little bit more clay content in that. But the background, I suppose, to the trial was that last year we had, the summer of 17-18, we had 130 mils of summer rainfall. So we were able to get moisture down to a metre, and when we went to seed, or when seeding occurred, we pretty much had moisture not quite to the surface, but probably around about 10 or 5 centimetres down. So we didn't try and get any crop up, we dry sowed it, but it just showed you that profile we measured the profile, and it roughly had about 50 millimetres of plant available water. So that's the picture there with Nigel, just of the machine, which I'm sure plenty of people here have used one before, and with inclusion plates in this situation here, but the treatments don't all have inclusion plates. So I've just got a couple of photos there, but that's what the soil type looked like after we deep ripped with the plates on. And you'll see the treatments coming up. Another one there is deep rip plus plates plus traffic. So we just used our track tractor to run across there and squash it all down. And then that was what it looked like post-seeding. So we sow on 381 millimetres or 15 inch. So we were fairly mindful to sow through at a fairly slow speed, just so we didn't, bury rows and whatever else. And effectively, that's what it looked like. You can see there that just in that treatment there's a little bit of a miss, but when we did our plant counts, we took that one out of the equation. And I'll get to the plant counts there. So you can see the treatments down the bottom here. So we've got control plus traffic, deep ripping plus traffic, deep ripping plus plates, deep ripping plates, and annual traffic. So that'll have traffic again next year. And you can just see we are getting a decrease where we have ripped in that situation there. Where we've got traffic, it seems to be probably improving. So a lot of people obviously using rollers and whatever else afterwards, but we aren't in this situation. And then the final yield response. So we're 0.78 there, and we go all the way through to about 1.92, I think it was, off the top of my head. So obviously a very strong response. Plates are positive. I'm just referencing that. So we've got a positive response there to plates, and with even with traffic afterwards, we've got positive, but the improvements are without traffic. And I guess the context of this is another soil type, or a similar soil type that hasn't been ripped, but we've got 1.5 tonne excavator. I dug down probably all of about 20, so I went around digging in sort of late September, October, just to look at how much moisture we're pulling out of the profile. I could only get our excavator in that soil type to about 30 centimetres, but I was quite surprised how well the crop was hanging on. And you can sort of see here, I know it's a little bit hard to see, but we had canola the year before, so even though it was hard as a rock, a lot of the roots were penetrating through where their last stubble was from the year before, which was canola stubble. So I suppose the reference to that was where we're going with rotation, and maybe where we have ripped, whether we look at different crops to keep those soil types open. So where to from here? I guess we're looking to monitor that trial site over the next 3 or 4 years, and it was great to hear some information earlier from WA. We're also looking to maybe investigate incorporation of manure to depth, so probably simply just spreading it out and hoping the inclusion plates can pull a reasonable amount in. And then we've also got to determine what soils are responsive. So where we've actually done our trials, they've been very responsive there. Where else should we be looking? So we'll look to quantify a bit more of that. So we've got more ripping planned for this year, but not on a large scale. We're just still trying to quantify the benefits. So take-home message is CTF does not have to be expensive, but sometimes it is hard to measure the benefits. And as I said, I'm lucky to have the support of some funding participants, being organisations, to do some research. Definitely been able to measure reduced fuel use. And as I mentioned, or as you see there, the early responses to deep ripping are extremely positive, but it's probably the perfect storm with a lot of moisture at depth, and we had a really, really dry winter. I just wrote down here that we had in that particular part of our farm, we had 65 millimetres of growing season rainfall on top of 50 millimetres stored moisture. So it had 115 millimetres of plant available water, so you can work out your evaporation rate, but if you even looked at 60 mils for evaporation in your French and Schultz model, then it's got a water use efficiency of 36 kilos. So we're going to be looking to quantify that going forward. And I'd like to acknowledge Australian Controlled Traffic Farmers Association, BCG, SPAR, AgVic, SARDI and the University of Queensland for their support over the years. Thank you.